In the military, in my case, you got a job to do. It's a level of responsibility. The same way on the battlefield, you got a split second to make a decision.
Medic! Medic!
And you have to make that decision based on training, based on the information of the current situation, and you can't procrastinate.
You young men, your word is your bond, but your character is your action. You have demonstrated the character that the forefathers bequeathed you that made this great nation that we got today.
He was just a great man, great role model to me.
God bless you and your service. Never surrender your weapon and face the enemy.
Service above and beyond the call of duty, conspicuous gallantry, courage under fire, facing an enemy despite overwhelming odds to accomplish the mission. These are some of the traits that defined much of the professional life of Army Colonel Robert Lewis Howard. He enlisted at age 17 and followed in the footsteps of his father and 4 uncles who served in World War II. In Vietnam, Colonel Howard would receive the Medal of Honor for his actions while serving with Special Forces. He would survive the killing fields of Vietnam to serve until his retirement in 1992 after 36 years in uniform. Before he passed away in December 2009, we had the privilege to sit down with Colonel Howard and reflect on the life and times of a career soldier, on the hard lessons learned in battle, and on the legacy he leaves for warriors to follow in his footsteps. And we'll hear from one of those warriors, someone who knew Colonel Howard very well.
Thank you, come on.
In retirement, Colonel Robert Howard continued to lead by example, shepherding onlookers, young and old, through the halls of the Medal of Honor Museum near Charleston, South Carolina.
Yeah, we are.
Bob Howard, sir. Very nice to meet you. Very nice to meet you.
It was just part of what became a personal mission, to share the history of uncommon valor by those who have served.
Through here, now here's a very special person. He's got quite a record. He was in during World War II, the Korean War. The Medal of Honor was initially designed and the criteria was changed over the years back in 1861 for special acts of service to our great nation. Part of the criteria is you save your fellow man's lives. You're saving lives. And in some cases, you have to destroy your enemy to save lives. And so above and beyond the normal call of duty, and that's what the Medal of Honor is presented for.
For Colonel Howard, it was important to note that the Medal of Honor history spans several generations of those who have gone above and beyond and includes today's generation of warfighters.
And this young posthumous award, McGinnis, he's a young man that went off and he sacrificed himself to save a bunch of his fellow comrades in a tank, jumped on top of a grenade. I've met this young man's family members and I've met his mother, and so he's very special too. He was a Navy SEAL that got killed during the War on Terror. I trained this man right here when I was in charge of Special Forces training, and he was killed in Somalia.
Colonel Howard had plenty of first-hand knowledge when it came to courage under fire.
And also a display here on a weekly magazine is my good friend Roger Donlin, who is a retired colonel. Him and I served together in the Special Forces. He was the first Special Forces officer to receive the Medal of Honor in Vietnam.
Colonel Howard would serve 5 tours in Vietnam, including duty with U.S. Army Special Forces, the Green Berets. During 58 months of combat in Vietnam, he was wounded 14 times. And during a period between 1968 to 1969, he was nominated 3 times for the Medal of Honor. He would receive that award for his actions during combat operations in 1968 in Vietnam, on a mission to rescue a fellow soldier in enemy-controlled territory.
You know, I had a job to do, and that's leadership. And I had a bad enemy situation, And the witnesses thought I went above and beyond what was required of my duty position. In other words, if I had not have done what I had to do, well, then nobody would have criticized me because I was blown up and laying on the ground, but I still had the ability to reconstitute myself and to overcome the enemy situation at a point in time to where I was successful in saving some people's lives and pulling my platoon leader out of an ambush site that was being attacked by the enemy that had ambushed us. There's no doubt in my mind there's many that I left on the battlefield that deserved the Medal of Honor, but they died and they didn't have witness statements that I was fortunate enough to have to be nominated by my fellow peers or my subordinates to receive the Medal of Honor.
Thanks.
You guys take care. Good luck to you. Thank you. First of all, I was ambushed and I was unconscious.
For Colonel Howard, the events of December 30th, 1968 are seared in his memory. It was a day when then Sergeant First Class Howard and fellow soldiers came under attack. A day when courage under fire would again be put to the test.
But there was 5 that were killed near me during the ambush. A blast must have blew me back and blew me upside down, and I was just crumpled up on the ground. And when I finally was in a state of coming to, I couldn't see, and blood running down my face, and that was what was in my eyes. I couldn't see. And then I started, I guess I was praying out loud, God, please, you know, and I'm thinking, I want to see. And I started to focus my eyes. I'm able to see all this stuff now, and my web gear is blown off of me. My weapon is just blown all to hell, and then I realized, what in the world did I survive to blow that weapon up like that? I had an AR-16, and I smelled the most horrible smell. I'm trying to look around, and I realized that there's an enemy using a flamethrower. And the people that had been caught in the kill zone, he was burning them. I always carried a M33 grenade on the left side. It was taped in place, and my initial intent was to use it on the enemy and myself because I knew I would be blown up pretty soon and burned up. And so as he moved toward me, he could see me wrestling, trying to get that grenade out, and he got as close to me as you are right now, and he's looking at me, and I'm looking at him, and we acknowledged each other. I could tell by looking at him, he was a well-trained North Vietnamese soldier. He had the determination and look of hate on his face. And he also had an evil look in his eye, like, I'm gonna kill you. I mean, I just felt that. And I had a kind of a smirk and a little smile because I had a grenade and he knew I had a grenade. The humor in battle. And I'm saying to myself subconsciously, I got you. No matter how bad I'm blown up, I got you and you know it. And that was kind of the expression between the two of us. And you know what this guy did? He stopped using flamethrower. He started yelling commands, and he had moved about 10 or 15 meters from me. And I said, I don't have to blow myself up. Or blow him up, but I said, I'm gonna blow him up. But you know, I didn't have the heart to blow that guy up. So when I threw the grenade, it really wasn't to throw the grenade to hit him, but it was kind of to throw the grenade at the other enemy that he had called out of position, and they come running over. And then at that point in time, I could hear the lieutenant screaming, and that's when I had to totally ignore the enemy situation and my wounds. He's quite a ways from me, and I couldn't walk, so I had to crawl over to him. And so as I start dragging him away, we get attacked by an enemy, a frontal attack again, 3 or 4 of the enemy. And one of the sergeants that was in the platoon, one of the squad leaders, was back down the hill a little ways, and he saw what I was doing as I crawled to him. He started laying down a base of fire and killed those enemy soldiers that were attacking me. But in that process, one of them fired a weapon, and he riddled me across the center of my body, and the ammo pouches blew up with the ammunition and actually picked me up off the ground and blew me away from. Now this is a split second that I didn't want to go back. But to even hesitate not to go back, it makes you feel so bad. You got to do what's right, and it was right. If I didn't do it, there was nobody else there to do it. Who else is going to do it? You got to make a decision. You know, everybody else was, they were either dead or wounded, or they in a position trying to help me. I had to go back, you know, but I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to go back because I was aware of the situation. I was wounded pretty bad, and I knew I was wounded pretty bad, but at least if I didn't survive, they can look and say that guy died the way he wanted to die because I went back. And I know the condition of a lieutenant, and I know that there's nobody else that's going to be able to get that lieutenant but me, and I didn't want to go back, but I did. And I went back and I dragged him back, and the sergeant laying down a base of fire. And they got me in a position to where I could command and give the commands and make decisions on the use of firepower, make assessments on the medics that were treating the wounded, and making sure that all our dead were accounted for, that we'd dragged them out of the kill zone, and we had as many as we could with us. We were able to get down and establish a defensive position and hold out for about 16 hours until we could get some relief in there and get evacuated. There were situations there that I had to make a decision, do, not do, do, and do. Most of the time, I think I made the right decision.
It was about 3 years later, and now Captain Robert Howard, while on yet another combat tour of Vietnam, was facing another enemy attack when word came from a very senior-ranking source of a very special honor.
As I tried to get into the mortar pit and jumped over the sandbags, I got hit in the foot. And about that time, one of the captains that was in our Tactical Operations Center was trying to run me down with a 312 telephone and say, I got the Chief of Staff of the Army on the telephone. He's calling all the way from Washington, D.C. And I thought the Chief of Staff of the Army was calling to get an update on the enemy situation, which we are under attack right now, from me on the battlefield. I'm a captain in charge of 218 Americans. Really, I thought they were kidding me when they said General Westmoreland. And he said, Bob, he says, how you doing? I said, sir, the situation is pretty damn bad here. I said, how you doing? You know, I said, you want my honest opinion, it's pretty bad right now. Plus my foot hurts. I just got shot in it. And he said, well, congratulations. He says, we're gonna award you the Medal of Honor. And I said, sir, I really appreciate that honor, but I said, I think I'm gonna have a problem getting out of here. He said, no, you won't. And General Abrams, the MACV commander, did send his aircraft down, and the airfield was still under attack, and they got me as close as they could to the plane. And with the lieutenant colonel, we kind of struggled together, and they were shooting at us, and we got on the plane. It took about 4 hits on takeoff. I didn't realize really the honor itself and appreciate myself until the award ceremony itself in Washington, D.C., and the courtesy that was extended to me by President Nixon and the First Lady, Mrs. Nixon, That's when I felt the responsibility and honor in receiving the award and the real responsibility that went with receiving that award. And President Nixon put it around my neck, and I turned real pale, and it was like I thought I was brave and all that stuff. And when he reached around me and put it around my neck, and he said, "Bob, are you okay?" He said, "You're mighty pale." And they say I almost fainted. I said, "I'm fine, sir. Thank you so much." And he said, "Well, what are you going to do here in Washington today?" I said, "Well, I really appreciate being here, sir." And I said, "I think I'm going over the tomb of the unknown soldier immediately following this ceremony, because, you know, I had my dad and 3 of my uncles that were killed during World War II.
Colonel Howard would visit the Tomb of the Unknowns again, this time joined by another president and other Medal of Honor recipients, and would again remember the fallen.
We represent them because, you know, we benefited by their sacrifice. They made that ultimate sacrifice for me, and that's what I remember. There's not many left out of the battles that I were in, but there were a lot of them killed, and so, yeah, I think I wear it for them.
Sergeant Robert Lewis Howard, Jr.
Sergeant Robert Howard has a pretty good idea about the importance of courage under fire as an 11 Bravo U.S. Army infantry soldier. He's seen firsthand the role of leaders in warfare while serving downrange in Afghanistan. He's also heard about the history of service and sacrifice by U.S. Army Special Forces, the Green Berets, from his father, Colonel Robert Howard. And as the son of a celebrated soldier, he's been working to carry on a family legacy of service.
He did amazing things. He helped a lot of people. He was just a great man, great role model. When I was a child, you know, I always looked up to my father and I was like, oh, you know, I want to be in the Army, I want to do this, I want to be a soldier, you know. We would go on walks all the time, you know, fishing, play sports, watch movies, whatever. Same, I guess, things other guys do with their dads. I don't even remember him spanking me when I was a kid. He didn't have to. He would just, you know, the voice and the look, and I guess that's all it took. Yeah, he told me quite a bit of stories. They're on a decline and they were taking fire from a machine gun nest. And it hit my dad's AR-15 or whatever he had, disabled it, and then a ricochet hit him in the forehead. And he flew back. It didn't penetrate his skull, but he flew back and he was knocked out. So I guess after a while he wakes up and he's bleeding from his head, he said. And he's like, all right, I'm gonna flank this bunker and take it out, you know. So I guess he, you know, skirmishes off to the wood line, comes back, and he just has one magazine, and it's .45. And there's like 5 guys in this bunker. So I guess he just rushed the bunker, took out 3 of them, and then his magazine was locked back, he had no more ammo. And they're sitting behind a machine gun and they surrendered.
Eventually, a young Robert Howard would make his own decision to serve, and he knew it would be with the Army, just like his father.
It was just, I felt like at that point I was seeing all the stuff that was going on, and I felt I needed to serve on my own, you know. Once I told him, he was happy.
And on the day of his graduation from infantry school in July 2006, a proud father and a son shared another kind of bond, as soldier to soldier. It was a chance for a father to thank a son who as a child asked a very important question.
He asked me, he said, Dad, would you want me to go to war? And I said, son, I don't want you to go to war. But if you decide to go to war, I'll be the proudest father in the United States of America. Thank you, Robert. We are looking at the finest America has got right here. dedicated to the principles that we live for, dedicated to the principles that allow us the liberties and the justice for me to stand up here.
Well, I went to the 173rd after, basic and airborne school. Then I went to Afghanistan with them for 15 months. Yeah, we were up in the mountains. We saw quite a bit. We were there for a month and our commander got killed. He got shot right in the chest with RPG, and we lost a couple other guys. But the commander that followed him actually used to be in Special Forces, enlisted. And he came and took control, and I think he saved a lot of lives. He was a really good commander. They told my commander and everything, hey, he has to go to Bagram for something. And I had no idea why. Bagram was like 2 hours, away, whatever, in a helicopter. So I got there and he was there. He'd been traveling. I think he'd already went to Iraq and was coming back or on his way. So he would go on these trips for like a couple months. And so it was a good time for us to catch up. He would give me advice. He loved that, that was his thing. That's why he would travel around Iraq and Afghanistan, just to talk to a soldier to make a difference. He said, there's a lot of guys from this generation that they would have done the same thing. I'm sure they face just as bad, situations as what we faced in the past, and they're just as big as heroes. Just keep fighting, no matter what, don't surrender. Because the human will can do a lot more than the body can. And if you don't stop fighting, you never know, you could be that one last guy. And obviously it was very sad. Yes, I was very proud, and I got some buddies in there too, so. And that's kind of cool. He's got great company there. He's right by Doolittle. He told me one of the big things was he was a really religious guy. So he never really, even at the end when he was dying, he never was afraid.
I don't regret one day of my service. I can almost tell you the names of every man right now that made a sacrifice for me to be here today in the battles that I was in.
If there's something that he wanted me and other people to take away, it would be, patriotism. He loved America so much, and not just, the country, but the idea and the people. And it gave him everything that he had. He came from nothing, and he was very successful. A father's gonna leave an impact on his son, good or bad. So he left a good one on me, so I'll try and take that and make him proud.
I was privileged to be born American. I was privileged to serve the greatest nation in the world. God bless you and your service. Never surrender your weapon and face the enemy.
In his 36 years, 8 months, and 8 days of service in uniform, Colonel Robert Howard received numerous awards and decorations for valor and distinguished service. He continued to train and lead soldiers after duty in Vietnam. And for many years after his retirement, he traveled across the nation and downrange, carrying the message of service and sacrifice for country to another generation.